My name is Anita Bowser. Today is April 30th, 2025. Can you tell me your name?
My name is Betty Jo, was Greenert, and now it's Smith.
Wow. Do you go by Betty or Betty Jo?
Well, Betty Jo generally.
Betty Jo, where are you from?
I'm from the west end of Butler, right next to Lindora. You know, you go up Route 8 and make a right, back in there we lived.
And how long did you live there?
Well, my granddad built those houses. He built 3 houses back there. And he and my grandma were living in the last house he built, and it was built in 1903.
Has it grown a lot back there?
Well, not really. He had lots there in that area. And what we had as a chicken yard, they have a house built on now. And the other 2 houses he built before he built the one they lived in. So, yeah, it was very interesting. Then we went to West End School. You had to cross Route 8 to go to West End School, but they always had a motorcycle cop down there to help us go across. So it was a very interesting thing. That whole area was a very friendly area, just working class people.
Did you have a lot of neighbors?
Yes, we did, and in fact, I think they're all dead now, but my sister and I were 14 months apart, and so we had the same friends and everything. See, they didn't have kindergarten at that time. And so when I went to school to go to first grade, well, they skipped me 2 half grades. We had A1 and B1. I don't know if you knew that or not. And so my aunt was a teacher, and I wrote left-handed, and she was horrified. So she had me practicing my writing all the time. So she taught me to read, really, before I went to school. So then they skipped me 2 times.
Oh, wow. What was that like?
Well, to me it was nothing, because they just told me, you go to that, you're in with that group now. And I said, okay. But my mother had to go to school, I know, and talk to the principal at the time. It was interesting. In school, there was a lot of people that went to West End School who were from like second generation in this country, because they all worked down at the mill and stuff. A lot of these kids spoke broken English. But then, it's like my dad said, once they got used to English, then they didn't use their other language anymore. Then the Depression, I remember, nobody had any money. That's the main thing I remember, because they had no jobs.
How old were you?
I was born in 1935. I was like 3 whenever I can remember some of those things. Like Easter and stuff was altogether different than now. Christmas was, you got one thing usually, a baby doll. And of course, we all went to church and Sunday school and that sort of thing. But it was a depressing time. That's what I remember most about it, was because my dad and Mom were young. I was the oldest. He didn't have, well, he worked in construction, so he didn't work all the time. He was always laid off. But I remember something about when they started paying them, what would you call that? Unemployment, yeah. And it wasn't much at the time, but it was good. It was just an altogether different experience from how people live now. The no kindergarten part is what comes as a shock now, because to not have kindergarten in the schools, I don't think people ever knew that.
There was not kindergarten?
No.
So you didn't go to kindergarten?
No. Nobody did. You went to first grade. then I suppose maybe some of the private schools or something maybe had it, but we didn't. I didn't even know anything about kindergarten kindergarten till I was probably 8. I realized, we missed something, or so they said. And another thing, the teachers weren't allowed to get married at that time.
Oh, wow.
And so all the teachers I had, but 2, when I got to be like 8th grade or something, they started letting them get married. But I knew about that because my aunt was a teacher, and she moved to Zelienople because she got married, and they wouldn't let her teach. So she went down there and worked in the orphans' home or something as a teacher because they were allowed to get married. Strange setup.
Yeah.
Then we had, just my sister and I were 14 months apart, and we were all Mom and Dad had at that time. And it wasn't until 1942 they had another one, and then another one.
So altogether, how many were there?
4.
4.
But then my dad was in the Navy, so he joined. That's a story he used to tell all the time. People told him that they were drafting people, as soon as they said it was going to be a war. And he always would tell people they wouldn't take me or something like that. Well, here they did take him because he was talking to somebody, but they needed people. Even my cousin who had polio, he had one leg that was paralyzed. They would considered him 4F, but they took him and taught him to be a radiologist, not a radiologist, a technologist for radiation. So that's what he did the rest of his life. So there were some good things that happened. But with just having a radio and no TV, that was different too.
I bet.
Yeah. Like the day that the war was declared. Like I said, we were at my grandma's and it was right on the radio. And everybody would sit around the radio and listen to the radio, and they were so shocked that
Wow.
December 7th, 1941, and we were in a Second World War. So, and everybody in the whole, that lived by us, anybody that had like a child that was 20, 18, a man that only had one kid or something, everybody got drafted. Some were 4F and couldn't go overseas, some could. And my dad, he joined, they took him in the Navy. Then he went to boot camp, and then he went to South Pacific, and that's where he was for a couple years. So after he had boot camp, then he didn't come home for like 2 years.
Do you remember what that was like for you?
Oh, yeah, because we were all upset because Dad was gone. But all the neighbors practically had somebody. Every house had they had the little flags they put in the window. It would be a brother or a cousin or a close relative that they would put the sign up in their window. Dad liked the Navy, but, it was not good. And then when the war was over, I remember it was in the summertime. And I don't know how they found out in the morning the war was over, but I remember somehow they got everybody outside and all the neighbors were out on the porches and they were hollering and singing. And,
I bet.
yeah, so, but I remember that. It says here, what did your family do to make ends meet? Well, my dad worked or whatever they would hire him at the time. But women didn't work, see. That's hard to believe, but they didn't. Mama stayed home with us, and she was older when she started to work then, but it was altogether different lifestyle.
Do you remember when your dad came back?
Yeah. He came back, it was like 6 months after the war was over. I can just remember he had all these sailors' uniforms and stuff. And they packed them away, and there's still some of them. Like my sister, one sister still has some of them, and my grandson, So it was a altogether different experience. Oh, just like even being in the Navy. My dad was on a small boat, he always told us, and then they would go and do repairs on the bigger ones who had been in battles. He liked it while he was in there, but of course he was a little bit older than the other boys in the service, so he was kind of like the boss, I think.
Oh.
But it was interesting. And all that stuff was.
Did he serve his whole time on a ship?
After boot camp, yeah. Well, one time he went to Australia for R&R.
Oh, wow.
And at that time they had letters. I don't know if you ever saw them or not. They were little letters that you could close, but there was scratched out half the stuff that was in there. They didn't want you to know what was in there.
Oh.
And so he sent us a letter telling us he was going to Australia. And of course, we were shocked because Australia seemed like it was so far away.
Yeah.
And he was in Fiji Islands and the Hebrides. I remember getting letters from those places. But he kind of liked the Navy. I think probably if he wouldn't have had us kids, he probably would have spent the whole time there. But then whenever he got out of the Navy, he was always worked in construction. And my granddad did too. He was also a carpenter. But Dad went, I guess, however they did it at that time. They had classes with the construction company. So he, after the Second World War was over, I remember one of his first jobs was to build a church up in Greenville, and he was in charge. And he was only had a 10th grade education. So then he built St. Michael's Church, you know where that is. Mm-hmm. He was a superintendent there. One of the fellows that worked for him told me later on, when he was older, that my dad measured for the altar, and he ordered from Italy all the marble. And they couldn't believe that my dad would know how much marble to get and stuff. They all said, oh, that'll never fit when he gets it here. It came back from Italy. It was perfect. 10th grade education. Now you go how many years? So anyhow, it was a very interesting time at that time. Oh, and in school, they had once a week, they had like they used to call them green stamp books, but during the war they were rationing books or whatever. And you would buy so many stamps and put them on a page till you got the book full. And then you turn them in. I haven't seen one of those, I don't think, since that.
Did you have rationing then?
Oh, yes, we had rationing for meat and just about everything that you buy in a store. And there was only a certain amount of stuff you could buy. And I don't know if they came in the mail every month or what, those rationing books. You'd take them to the store, and if it was meat, he'd take a couple, you know. But we knew we had to take those stamps with us.
Did you have a garden?
Oh, my, yes, always. When my dad was home, he spaded it with a spade. And I suppose it was probably about as big as this room. Now when I think, oh, my, because when I was married, my husband died, but he always had a digger to... My dad did it with a shovel. So that was interesting. And then we had to go help. We had to pick stuff and can stuff. So we canned a lot of stuff when I was little. No freezers. Nobody had a freezer. We had an ice box, and you put your milk and stuff in there. Like tomatoes, we get a whole bushel of tomatoes. And then you had to do all that stuff that was not much fun. Put it in the hot water and the cold water and can it. But Mom canned all kind of stuff. But every year we had to throw some out because there was always a couple jars that wouldn't seal. And I can remember being a little kid and think, why would you bother? You know? But it was an interesting time, believe me, especially now when these people would come home that lived around us. They were all different. Some were in the Marines, some were soldiers. One fellow, I think, was an airplane pilot or something. I never got to talk to him, but I used to always wonder how he learned to be an airplane pilot. But it was after the war, I never saw him again, so I don't know. He probably married somebody somewhere else and left.
And what kind of things did you help your mother with around the house?
Putting clothes through the wringer, rinsing them, hanging them out on the line. My sister and I fought over doing dishes every day, because we had to do them by hand. Nobody had a dishwasher. We didn't even have a refrigerator for a long time because during the war you couldn't get one. And so, that's why we had the ice box. Well, nobody had a washer or dryer. You couldn't put, you just had to have a wringer, and wash clothes, rinse them, hang them up. But then you didn't have very many clothes either. That's another thing, only a couple changes. And you had to wear a dress, no slacks. You had to have boots that covered your shoes, but they slipped off and on, And it was a strange, when I think back, it seems like it was a very strange setup. We thought it was fun at the time, but the war really did, even when you go to the movies, and at that time a movie was like 11 cents. By that time I was probably 10 or so. But, the movies were black and white, and they also had, between the movies, they had newsreels, and they showed, I can remember, the Holocaust, and pictures of all those people in the internment camps, and bones and bodies, just like, and we were little kids, but that was a sad situation, believe me.
So no TV, and you listened to the radio.
Well, there was a 15-minute news. I remember that. Mom would turn that on. And Grand Ole Opry was one thing. And some continued stories every day, 15-minute portions. We would watch them. My sister and I would come in from outside and listen to that. But then we also, she and I always played volleyball and stuff, which was not normal at that time. But because there was nothing else to do, that's what we did. And but it was a very pleasant time, we thought. But just like I said, no dress, you had to wear a dress to school. And the one time they had a deep snow, and we had to walk, and all they had was a path somebody'd shoveled through, and you had boots and your legs sticking out.
How far did you have to walk?
Well, the grade school was just a block, and then are you familiar with Butler?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we went to West End School. Then when I was in 5th grade, they took us to Broad Street for a year. And so we had to walk to West End, the first floor, then walk down to Broad Street. Now that seemed like a far distance for us, but it wasn't really. Then I was only down there 1 year, and then we went back to West End School. But it was, even school was altogether different because kids behaved. They did, everybody. Well, we were afraid to even, I can remember walking up and down the steps at the West End School, and the principal would stand over there. And so we would walk, keep your arms down at your sides, and we had to do that. We did it.
Wow.
Now, can you imagine telling those kids, keep your arms down at your sides? I can't imagine, no. And it says on this, and how did you get news? Well, it was when we went to the movies, which was not very often, but we did go. And then they always had a newspaper at home. They got before they had the Butler Eagle, they used to get the Pittsburgh Press, I think it was, or Sun Tally or something like that. And we all read them, even though we were just little kids.
Did you like to read the comics?
Yeah, oh yeah, that's another thing. We went to it, there was stores on every corner. And we would go down to the Doria's store. I don't know if you knew where that was. But he always had a comic book rack. And if you behaved yourself in there, he let you read a comic book. So my sister and he would let us read a comic book.
Wow.
Now nobody reads comic books. At least my grandkids don't. They play on a computer. So things are quite different. There was very few kids that took dancing lessons or anything when I was little. They just didn't do that sort of thing. So that's why my sister and I got into volleyball and softball and stuff like that when we were older. But it was different, that's for sure.
And what was high school like?
High school. I didn't like high school at all. They had, once I got to the red brick building, I took advanced classes because I wanted to be a doctor, but we didn't have the money for that, so I knew I was going to go to school anyhow and be a nurse. And the high school, I don't know, there was something about it that it just, I didn't think it was much fun at all. Well, my work was hard. I had a lot of studying to do. And
well, you had moved up too, a couple of grades,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Were you younger than your classmates?
Yes. Because I was like 16 when they were 17. Well, that's one thing. One reason I didn't like it was because these girls always were wearing fancy dresses and stuff, and I was still a little girl. So it made a difference.
Yeah.
But I got through it. And but that was 10th, 11th, and 12th. And I remember having to take Latin and stuff, and I didn't like that, but you just did it. Because what they told you to do, you did it. It isn't like that anymore.
So then, after high school?
I graduated from high school on a Friday, and I went in nurses training on Sunday.
Wow.
Well, that's how they did it then, and
Is
he went
it?
for 3 years, year-round.
Wow.
And so we went to Slippery Rock. That following Monday, we went up to Slippery Rock College, and we took chemistry, and 4 courses we took. One was dietetics, and one was chemistry, and there was 2 other ones. Anyhow, they were not hard classes. Chemistry was hard, but I'd had it once already in high school, so it wasn't hard for me. But those girls that came from a smaller school that didn't have chemistry, they were really perturbed. And then when you went to nurses training at that time, the same way, you were not allowed to wear, you had to have a skirt. And so they got part of your tuition, bought uniforms and caps, and all that my parents had to provide was this hose and the shoes. And but those uniforms, I can remember ironing, starching them, washing them, starching them, and then ironing them because they, you had to wear a nice uniform at that time. I've been out of nurses school for quite a long time when they started letting us wear slacks. But that was so much better.
Really?
Oh, yes. Because when you had slacks on, if you bent over and stuff, you didn't. But when you just had a skirt on, it was bad. I mean, you didn't. If you walk, you see yourself in the mirror, you'd think, oh, it was something else.
How long was the school? How long did you go to nursing school?
3 years. You got off a couple weeks, once a year was all. But we worked 44-hour weeks.
Wow.
Now that's one thing, so it comes as a surprise. The nursing was, they taught us everything from how to even give water to patients and right straight through. And see, they don't do that anymore. Now they send them to graduate school, 2 years of college courses before they do anything else.
Mm.
So it's altogether different. Everything's different.
And where was your first job? After school?
The OR at Butler Hospital.
Wow.
And I worked there for about a year. And I liked that job, but you had to take call. And so they'd call you maybe 10 o'clock at night, and you'd be up to the hospital till 2 or 3 and go home. And then sleep a couple hours and have to go to work again. But so then I went to the VA to work. And it was tuberculosis at the time, all tuberculosis. And I worked out there on the surgical floor and then a little bit in the OR.
What was that like at that time?
Well, at that time, they had real good program for keeping yourself clean. Every room had spigots outside the door, and we wore, paper hats and gowns on the top of our uniforms and stuff. And because they're all contagious, they were all, of course, most of them were Second World War veterans. I remember one patient tell me one time that he was in some place down around Florida and the islands out in the ocean. He said they taught them all about VD. They didn't teach them about TB. So all that stuff is, is different. But I worked there for about 18 years. But it was interesting because they developed all those new medications and stuff and used them out there for tuberculosis at that time. So I liked that too. But I always liked nursing. It was, for me, it was interesting. Some of the girls didn't like it, but I did. There were many things that you would be exposed to over the years. Like patients they had, most of them were, when I first went out, Second World War veterans and stuff, they had picked up tuberculosis while they were in the service and stuff. And then later on, of course, they had medications and stuff. And there was only one type of tuberculosis that they didn't have medications for. That was, I guess my whole life's been very interesting.
It seems that way.
Very different, yeah.
So when did you get married?
Well, what year did I get married? 1957.
And you were working at the VA then?
Yeah, I was working at the VA, and I was living at home. Of course, I lived in West End, so it wasn't too far to drive.
Did you always have a car?
Well, I had to buy a car to get it. Well, you couldn't. No, my aunt used to work at the VA too, and she worked in the kitchen, and she would catch a bus and go out. But I always had a car because, there were just different things that I couldn't do. Like if you did work in the OR and you happened to be on call, and things like that, you had to have a car. Or if they sent you somewhere for instructor, for, some type of learning experience or something. So as soon as I bought a brand new car, I remember, and at the time, how much did that cost me? Like $2,000 for a brand new Ford.
Wow.
So, but things were quite different in a lot of ways. And, but out there, that whole area, where the VA was, they had people, a lot of nurses had been in the war and stuff. Some of them lived in apartments back there and stuff. So it was altogether different. And now there's nothing over there, I guess. But the other part, the new hospital they built, is all, I don't even know anybody that works there anymore, but the one girl told me a couple years ago that it's all for patients that are up and around and stuff. So it's different.
Do you want to share any of your favorite memories of your family?
Well, I wonder what... I have 4 children. Linda's my oldest. And then I have Billy, Jamie, and Jeff, 3 boys. And they were all good kids. And Linda had to, I guess, take care of some of the younger ones. We always lived out of town after I got married.
Did your kids go to school, to college?
Oh, yeah, they all 4 went. And Linda went to Clarion, and Billy went to Slippery Rock, and Jamie went to Geneva College down Beaver Falls, and Jeff went down there too. They played football. That was a nice college. I liked that down there. And then the kids listened. It was a very nice setup for the kids. Some of these ones around here, they didn't make them like go to some church services and stuff. At Geneva they did. So the kids all liked it there.
What kind of advice would you give your younger self?
My younger self?
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought I did pretty good. I just did what I was told. And I guess I wouldn't have got so mad about doing dishes and stuff, maybe. But we all had those chores to do because when there was, well, Mom only had 4 kids too, and Dad was in the service for a while. And then, like when he built church up in Greenville, he would go up there and work and stuff. So it was difficult for her too, I think. But you don't find that out till you have kids of your own. But well, she was good to us. Although we made it difficult for her. And, well, Shirley and I, my sister's 14 months younger, we did a lot of cooking and stuff and baking from the time we were probably 11 or 12. And we babysat when we were 11 or 12, neighbors' kids and stuff. And do you know where Mince's Market was?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, we lived across the street, 2 streets over, but they asked my sister, she was only 13, I think, if she would work for them. So she went and worked for them for a couple years. And to this, well, she died 6 months ago, but she was 88. But anyhow, she always said that they want her to slice meat and stuff, and she was so afraid to do that because she was just a little kid. But, you know, at that time, I guess you got working papers or something, and
yeah,
you could go to work. So, and I went to Grant's store to work. I don't know if you know, that was up in town.
So what was the store like in those days? Was it
Well, the
different
store
from...
that she worked for, Mince's,
Yeah.
it was just a little corner grocery store. They had lunch meat and cheese and canned goods, but she didn't like slicing the meat.
Did you stroll the aisles, or did you take a list and give it to someone? How did it work?
Well, like Mom would give us a list and like send me over if Shirley was working, and she'd get me that stuff. And you paid for it when you're getting out. But now, like a lot of those family stores, they had their whole family would work there. You know, like do you know McCain's Market? Do you know? Well, McCain's lived upstairs of that market, and I think it was Janie and Jack too. That sometimes in the evening, if I was going to work, I worked night turn and stuff, and I'd stop there. But they'd come down from upstairs and get me what I wanted, and just. They didn't think anything about it, I guess, and neither did I at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But it was all that stuff was different because, there was McCain's there and Dory's was right beside. And then there was Morrow's Market on Brady Street. And then there was where the donut shop was, I think there was a little store in there. And there was Adolph's drugstore and a bakery, the Butler Bakery, Adolph's drugstore. There was Clinton Hotel, they had food. But every little area was all just stuck to itself. Altogether different from now.
Yeah. Linda told me that you bought some silver and china on payments.
Uh-huh.
How did that work?
Well, that was easy. They knew that my sister and I were, that time, I would have been out of nurse's training. No, I wasn't. I think that's when I was working at Grant's store. I worked the first serving. You bought like one serving of silver, and then you would order it, and then you would pay so much every week, and then they would bring it to you when you had it paid for.
Wow.
And then the china I got at Montgomery Ward's, and I did the same thing about there, but that was what everybody did. So things were altogether different. And but I thought for sure that silver, it would get used a lot. But after I would say probably my kids were probably 6 to 10 or in that age group. I just quit using it because my sister-in-law came with my mother-in-law, and she said something about my sister-in-law using paper plates for everything. And I thought, that's a good idea. So when I had a lot of people there, they'd use paper plates. But the silver, then at that time, a lot of people bought stainless steel stuff too, at the regular steel. But the silverware, it cost a lot, and it would still cost a lot.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And you still have it?
I just gave it to Linda. I wanted her to have it eventually. And I thought, well, I'm 90 years old, I better start getting rid of some of this stuff. So I think there's service for 8, but it is pretty. But it's a lot of work to
polish it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was there anything else that you'd like to talk about, Betty Jo?
Well, now I just have to think here. We did have some pets, but they weren't in the house. My dad had gotten a couple white bunnies from somebody when he was building a house. And he brought them home, and he built a cage for them outside. And here the mother had 13 little white bunnies. And as far as role models growing up, I don't know that I ever even thought about it. I just know I wanted to be a doctor, but I couldn't afford it. Of course, my dad, the fact that he could lay out buildings and stuff with a 10th grade education, that did shock me. Well, as far as liking, I always liked nursing. And I didn't think I would when I started, but I was there about a week and I thought, well, this is fine.
How did you guys heat your house when you were young?
Well, we had a coal furnace or a coal stove in the dining room and buckets of coal. And you'd shove a couple shovelfuls of coal in that dining room stove. And then at night you had to put stuff on it to make it so it didn't burn. It just smoldered like all night. And then when we moved into the house that my granddad had built in 1903, they had a big furnace in the basement. And you did the same thing with that, but that was in the basement. But with that type of heat, it was dirty. I mean, that smoke got on everything. Never thought about that before, but that was a chore too, because when you got up in the morning, when you had that coal stove in the dining room, somebody had to go in there and take the old stuff off and put some fresh coal and stuff in. Everything was work.
Yeah. This has been a real pleasure talking to you.
Well, it's been nice talking to you too.